Welcome once again on this day on the Grizzly True Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and today we're going to talk about January 3rd, 1993, the greatest rally or the biggest choke job in NFL history as the Buffalo Bills come from 35-3 down to defeat the Houston Oilers in the playoffs. Now, it seemed like a logical decision at the time. It was cold, windy. Rich Stadium in suburban Buffalo in 1993 in January is always cold, and the Bills were behind 35-3 in the second half of a first-round playoff game against the Houston Oilers. With the outcome seemingly no longer in question and the weather raining uninvitingly, many fans simply chose to go home. The score was not the lone reason for pessimism. The Bills were playing without starting quarterback Jim Kelly, their franchise quarterback, linebacker Cornelius Bennett, who had been named the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year, and running back Thurman Thomas, the Offensive Player of the Year, who injured his hip early in the third quarter of the game. And the Oilers had been crushed just the week before to end the season at the old Astrodome 27-3. Now, Don Beebe's mom, Barb, said, "I almost never, ever give up." But at that point, I kind of did give up. She was at the game, like I said, the mother of Don Beebe. And, but to this day, this game resonates, especially with Bills fans, because the Bills would go on to proceed to mount the largest comeback in NFL history. A victory that two decades later, still the biggest comeback ever. Actually, it's almost 3 decades later. Showing my age. It didn't seem that long ago to me. So some of the fans who left early did not realize until much later that the Bills had actually come back to win. Others heard it unfold on the radio. The game did not sell out, and with NFL rules back in the way it wasn't televised locally. The Bills did not allow fans who left the game to re-enter the stadium. The only way for those to get back in who had left the stadium early was to climb an imposing fence. Now, many fans did just that until late in the game when the team began to allow fans with ticket stubs back in the stadium. Frank Reich, who was filling in for Jim Kelly, said that when the Bills were facing seemingly insurmountable odds, a teammate reminded them about Frank Reich in college. Now, if you didn't know it, Frank Reich in college orchestrated one of the greatest comebacks in history when he took the Maryland Terrapins in 1984 to play the defending national champion Miami Hurricanes, and they were down by 31 points to the U, and Frank Reich was the quarterback for Maryland that led them from behind to win the game. And Reich said, "I knew it could be done, but I don't think anyone was thinking about winning the game at that point. It was about being a professional and not getting embarrassed." Now, the improbable comeback was propelled by 2 botched kicks, a shanked punt, a bobbled snap, and a no call by the officials. The officials always have something to do with it, don't they? And a short kickoff set up a 50-yard scoring drive by Buffalo that cut the lead to 35-10. Then Bills kicker Steve Christie recovered his own kickoff. Marv Levy, the Buffalo coach, still insists the play was a flub and not a planned onside kick. Now, 3 plays later, Don Beebe caught a 38-yard pass on first down to make it 35-17. Replay showed that he stepped out of bounds before making a catch. And, Barb Beebe insists her son never stepped out of bounds and said that was the point when she regained hope. Chris Dishman, who was the cornerback for Houston on the play, still says the no call cost the Oilers the game. And, it probably did. I mean, if you take that away, the greatest comeback may never happen. Now, Reich threw 3 touchdown passes in 7 minutes against the NFL's third-best pass defense to cut the deficit to 35-31. He then threw another touchdown pass to the great Andre Reed for the third time to give Buffalo a 38-35 lead. The Oilers soon had a chance to tie, but holder Greg Montgomery bobbled a snap to botch a 31-yard field goal attempt. Warren Moon drove the Oilers to the Bills' 9 in the waning seconds of regulation, and Houston kicked a field goal with 12 seconds left to send the game into overtime. The Oilers got the ball first, but Nate Odoms picked off Moon's pass at Houston's 37-yard line, which led to a Christie field goal that gave the Bills a 41-38 win. The Bills poured onto the field in celebration. The fans who had stayed or returned hugged, kissed one another, cried tears of joy, and sang the team's theme song, Shout, for the seventh and final time in the second half of that game. Now, at the post-game news conference, Reich recited the lyrics to a Christian song that he said inspired him before taking questions. Chris Dishman was more direct. He said it was the biggest choke in history. Everyone on the team, everyone in the organization choked today. Now, I disagree with that. I think it was a choke to some extent. And remember, the Houston Oilers were a proponent of the old run-and-shoot offense that Mouse Davis had brought into fame in the USFL. And then June Jones had run with it. And the Houston Oilers run-and-shoot offense, the problem with it was, at 35-3, they're still throwing the ball all the time. And that's not what you want to do. You want to run the clock out. And if they would have just settled down, ran the ball, taken time off the clock, they probably win the game. Now, after the game, the Oilers fired defensive coordinator Jim Eddy and the defensive backs coach Pat Thomas. And they fired him the day after the game. And a local radio station held a funeral for the team, complete with coffins and servers from Hooters as pallbearers. Now, Bills fans were convinced that maybe the team's luck had finally changed. Of course, they'd lost the two previous Super Bowls, and they went to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, who I think the Steelers were the number one seed at that point. It was Bill Cowher's first year, and the Steelers had surprised everybody by making the playoffs. And they dominated the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And then they go to Miami. And Miami, of course, has the great Dan Marino. Miami is the favorite. And if I remember right, Buffalo shut them down like 29-10. They go on to the Super Bowl to play the Dallas Cowboys, the first of two attempts to play the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys routed them 52-17 in Super Bowl 27. And again, of course, the next year. The interesting thing in that game, of course, was Kelly had come back to be the quarterback during the playoffs after the wild card game. And when they fell behind like 31-10, they actually brought Frank Reich into the game. He took him for a touchdown right away, and a lot of people thought, here we go again with Reich, but it wasn't to be. The Cowboys were just too strong. Now, the Oilers, who made the playoffs around this time 7 years in a row, started the next season 1-4, but won 11 straight games before losing in the first round of the playoffs yet again. And they lost in the first round to the Kansas City Chiefs and Joe Montana, who played one of his great games ever to beat him 27-20. Now, the Oilers franchise moved to Tennessee in 1997, and I believe it probably has a lot to do with the choke, along with the other Houston Oilers playoff failures. And it kind of paved the way for the team's departure, because the Oilers' playoff collapses lingered in the city's collective psyche, and that even now, Texans fans kind of expect their team to come up short at this time of the year. And 2 years after the Oilers moved, the franchise again met in the playoffs, the two franchises. This time the Bills were the hard luck losers, going down to Tennessee on the Music City Miracle, which was a disputed kickoff lateral play in the final seconds of the game. This comeback will always go down in history. And as Jim Kelly said, when you come back from 32 points down, it's one of the greatest games in NFL history. And this Bills team will never be forgotten just because of that comeback. So you have, on this day, the greatest playoff comeback ever, with the Buffalo Bills overcoming a 35-3 deficit to win in overtime 41-38 over the Houston Oilers. So make sure you check us out on this day, every day on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. We're here every day. Just check out thegruelingtruth.com. Follow along on Twitter at Grueling Truth. You can hear our podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcast. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for now, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.